So during a time of such political despair, how do we remain both steadfast in our responses and rage while being able to imagine new freedoms for all of us? And what does this look like for each of you?
I have to go back to this idea of creative practice. I think turning to creative practice, whether it's yourself making something, building something, collaborating with someone, dancing, moving, singing, breathing, writing, or going to watch someone else do that in a liberatory way. Go to watch someone do dance, go to watch someone do performance, go to watch someone do creative work, whether it's painting or drawing or whatever, because artists literally help us to quite literally paint a picture of where it is we're trying to get to. Artists use their bodies, they use their mediums that they have at their at the ready to be able to illustrate the unimaginable, to illustrate a potential future, to illustrate the world wherein we all get to be free. So I would say in this moment of despair, in this moment of helplessness, turn to artists, if you can. Become an artist, if you can, and just be involved in the creation of as much as you can, because when you look at what happened with the 150th anniversary of cultural genocide here in Canada, and that moment where Canada was deciding to celebrate this horrific thing, and you look at the single solitary act of Kent Monkman drawing that series of paintings that he drew and creating that installation, and how that completely flipped the conversation about the 150 celebration. It completely pushed forward a much more complex and deep and meaningful conversation about the violence that happened through the residential school program and through the 60s scoop and etc. He picked up a brush and he painted for us exactly what happened in a way that we could not ignore. And so I think turning to artists are really, I think they're essential to liberatory movements, and they help us to imagine the possible. So, but I would say become an artist. Don't just turn to artists, but become an artist.
So I don't feel like I'm in a moment of despair, and maybe that's the strategy, is to, so I think knowing the state of the world that we live in, and knowing that it's been worse and can get worse, but also we survive and we find new strategies of walking through. I think that's what keeps me moving. It's okay, great. 63% of Toronto voted for John Tory. Okay, we have some work to do, right? In 4 years, someone find a candidate. It's time to clean them up. And I keep thinking of what's next? What's the next possibility? Where can we push a little bit further the next time? What kinds of levers need to be, stepped on a little bit harder so we can move to the next piece? I think the strategy of it is what keeps me feeling less helpless or hopeless about it, because we've experienced worse, we've survived worse, and we know how to make it better. The dreaming of a future, we're not dreaming of something we don't know. We're dreaming of something we're aware of what it could feel like. Even if we don't know what it looks like, we know what it could feel like. So that gives us an opportunity for possibility. It just means we have to shift how we're moving through, right? So I think, yeah, it's a tricky one. I think the thing that got me was 25,000 votes for Faith Goldie. Where are you hiding? This is the moment where we need to start calling out those folks that we've been watching for some time, and we actually think they're a little bit dangerous, and now's the time to knock them down a pedestal or two, right? But that's the work that I think I push for, and I think, again, all my work is in spaces where people are talking about a community of people that left a war, became refugees in a country that's done everything in their power to keep them immobilized, and yet Somalis basically run Weston and Lawrence. So I'm like, we're basically running York Southwestern. whatever we think about Ahmed Hussein, I'm not the hugest fan. Somalis voted him in, so that says we know what our power looks like, right? So I think there's some, and he wants to come back, and I don't think they're going to give him another shot. So I think that says something about people's internal individualized powers that they can manifest as a collective. And I also come from a community of people that don't stand singularly, right? They stand, it's always in power of numbers. So I think even in the moments where we feel very defeated, there's 5 other people saying, come on, we don't want him back. What are we gonna do? We're gonna circle the coffee shops and start chit-chatting, which is what we do 2 years before an election. All of us do, whether or not we realize it, right? And interrupt, continuously interrupt. I think people are often shocked by the positions that I hold and the places that I walk into, and it gives me a great source of joy to walk into those places and say, I think you've noticed I'm Black, that's great. That's excellent. You might have noticed that my motivation is to support Black youth, also great. I'm not even gonna pretend that anything else is on my radar. Let's keep going. And people make choices all the time about what they're willing to engage with and what they're not willing to engage with. But maybe there's somebody down the street that will be better able to talk to them, but I'm not the person for you today, right? So I think this is the thing that motivates me and keeps me going. Is I can't fall into helplessness all of the time, because there's still so much more that I can do. I'm still breathing. Somebody said a quote to me recently, I can't remember what it is, but it's I'm still here, I'm still alive, I'm still breathing, and therefore my work is not done.
I wasn't shy, I just know I spoke a little bit over my time, so I wanted to make sure that y'all had time to really speak to what you were going to speak to today. But I think this question is so important, and something that continues to resonate with me, I think, when I think about like how and why we keep going at times like this. I was hosting a conversation with 2 former political prisoners, known as the Angola Three, Albert Woodfox and Robert King. And Albert Woodfox spent 43 years in solitary confinement in a cell that was about 6 feet wide. 43 years, right? And he's now come out and he's rejoined the movement, and he's traveling around just raising consciousness of young Black people and people all around the world in terms of not only what happened to him, but like what is happening to Black people now and how it's all connected to these histories, right? When I spoke to him about how did you survive this with anything that looks like, the drive that you have now, and what he spoke to, that I always really remind myself of, I think, in moments that are difficult, because it can be hard to be an activist, but I did not spend 43 years in solitary confinement. But what he said is that it was just that consciousness of knowing exactly why he was there and what kind of system had placed him there that kept him sane, as he said, right? He said that they couldn't break him because he was aware at every moment and every day of exactly the system that had put him in this place. And because of that, he didn't start to doubt himself, and he didn't start to let his mind sort of be broken down by this system. And I think that's something that's so incredibly powerful, right? And that really speaks to the reason why, I spoke about raising consciousness earlier, but that's always been such an important part of our movements, right? If you look to the fact that people worked so hard to make sure that enslaved people could not read and write, and you look to how hard our ancestors worked to make sure that anyways, we were learning those skills, that we were passing on stories orally, that we have teachers like Mary Ann Shad Carey that were educating Black youth, that we've always done this work for ourselves, and it's that work that I think has allowed us to keep some kind of sense of self and some kind of sense of possibility and some kind of future. Right? So I think it helps gear us toward what it means to not only be aware of your present, but be aware of the power that you do have to create some kind of change. And when I think about what our ancestors who didn't survive, those who threw themselves over the side of the ships, and also those who did survive, right? The generations of people that have come before us and fought, and some of whom didn't make it, right? When I think about what they did to make sure that we could be here in places like this, fighting for what we have to fight for today, I think about what we need to give to those who come next, right? About the next generations, about the next 4 generations and more, and beyond that, right? What we owe to them because of what was given to us and what was sacrificed for us.
I really want to echo that. I think it's so powerful when people understand the system It does something when someone says something to you and you're able to say, you're just really intimidated by a black person in a position of leadership. And that's okay, that's on you. And that's this bigger piece here. But it's not, right? It does something when you see all the ways in which you're being streamed out. Because then I think, for me anyway, I spend less time, then what happens is I spend less time focusing on the personalization of it. It stops being about me, and I start seeing it for what it is, which is learned behaviors, system, ways that people are working that make them feel good. But that has nothing, you feeling good, as Julie Black said, that's you, that's a you problem. Right? It's not it has nothing to do with me, but I think we don't also spend time with young people showing them how systems work. Like getting into a master's program is a crock, right? Like it's all a joke. We know how it works. There's 3 people in a faculty, they read all the applications, and then they choose who they like. If you come with a sponsor, i.e. a professor who really likes you, who talks to so-and-so in the back corner, your application gets pushed through. So what do you teach young people about applying for a master's program? You teach them to go do an info session with everybody in the faculty and make sure they all know your name and your face before you apply for the program that next year. And one of those people on the committee better as hell be your supervisor, because then you're getting some scholarships too, right? But that's a systems information piece. We don't share this information with people. But look at what difference it makes when someone's like, oh, so it's actually not about how good or how bad I am at school? It has everything to do with who I know? Okay, let's do this differently next year, right? So I think we too are part of it, right? We hold back valuable pieces of information because we think because we got it and we got in that somehow we also need to participate in the gatekeeping, and we don't. It's not on us to do it. We can very easily toss the whole thing out the window, right? So this is, I think, understanding systems is so powerful, and I think for me is such a big way forward for all of us too.